Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 171. Blood Demon Dao Child Sang Luo gave an arrogant snort that was apparently a response to Shu Luordi. Shu Luordi seemed to glow with vitality as he gazed upon approaching Meng Hao. His eyes were thick with cruelty. Today, Shu Luordi will help you to understand that when you help someone you shouldn't, you will incur my wrath, he said, his voice filled with crazed fervor. And I will also help you to understand what shaman cultivators fear the most. The various Xiao clan members were all pale-faced. Xiao Chang'an laughed a bitter laugh, well aware that he had no way to undo what had already been done. He took a deep breath and strode forward, power from his cultivation base suddenly exploding out. It was the power of the mid-foundation establishment stage, but it seemed somewhat weak. He was reaching the end of his longevity, so his qi passageways had long since begun to wither. With effort, he could display the power of the mid-foundation establishment stage, but in doing so, would actually harm his life force. The matter today has to do with the Xiao clan, not any outsider, he said, his entire body seeming to grow taller. This person wasn't invited here by the Xiao clan, his only passing through. If the disappearance of the Xiao clan is the will of the heavens, then take this spirit lake. But if you intend to take any of my clan members, then you must treat them well. Otherwise I'll make you pay, even if I have to die in the process. His words echoed out with great power, causing Shu Luordi's brow to furrow. As for Sang Luo the midget, he emitted a shrieking laugh. Meng Hao looked over at Xiao Chang'an, and suddenly his feelings toward the man changed. He nodded, and then coolly said, "Fellow Daoi Xiao, didn't you give this lake to me as a gift? In that case, it belongs to me. Does anyone here dare to attempt to take it away?" The vines in front of him shot toward Sang Luo and Shu Luordi. Sang Luo let out an ear-piercing laugh which was filled with contempt and disdain. He flipped his sleeve grandly, and from within a black sealing stone flew out. It expanded as it shot forward, emitting a strong pressure that caused all of the vines to stop in their tracks. Only the main trunk vine continued onward, howling. Sang Luo's piercing laughter accompanied him as he took a step forward. He lifted his right arm to reveal a hand much smaller than an average person's. He waved it toward the approaching main trunk vine. A black wind sprang up and whistled toward the vine. At the same time, Shu Luordi's laughter filled the air. His body flashed as he made a beeline toward Meng Hao, his eyes shining with fierce killing intent. The instant he took to motion, however, Xiao Chang'an suddenly leaped to obstruct his path. A look of disdain covering his face, Shu Luordi flicked his wide sleeve. A roaring sound filled the air, and Xiao Chang'an was pushed back. "I'm not going to kill you for now," he laughed. "We'll be relatives by marriage soon, and still have wedding wine to drink." He shot toward Meng Hao. "And now I'll help you to understand that what shaman cultivators fear most is being beheaded." He laughed arrogantly. Meng Hao's face, on the other hand, was the same as ever. It hadn't changed even the slightest bit as he allowed Shu Luordi to approach. When Shu Luordi was roughly 9 meters away, Meng Hao's eyes suddenly shone with a cold light. He didn't retreat, but instead flickered, and suddenly appeared directly in the path of Shu Luordi. He lifted his hand, and a billowing flame sea appeared along with a roaring, 300-meter-long flame dragon. When the flame dragon appeared, Shu Luordi's expression suddenly changed to one of complete disbelief. That. It was almost as if he didn't dare to believe what he was seeing. But he felt the intense pressure exuded by the flame dragon, which far exceeded that of the late foundation establishment stage. A sense of life or death danger filled his entire body, inundating his head with a booming drone. It was as if his body had been struck with countless lightning bolts. His face continued to be filled with disbelief. Late foundation establishment. His body began to tremble, an intense dread shone from his eyes. How could he ever have imagined that the young man of the early foundation establishment stage could possibly erupt with the power of late foundation establishment? As for his so-called beheading, The person he thought he could so easily defeat had suddenly transformed into a violent beast who could slaughter him hundreds of thousands of times over. It wasn't just him who was shocked. Xianxia gasped and stared, dumbstruck. He was literally incapable of reacting to what he was seeing. His mind filled with buzzing. And then, his eyes filled with wild joy. When the flame dragon appeared, the vines that had been suppressed by Sang Luo, the midget suddenly shook and lifted up. Within the black robe, 2 eyes emanated shock. All of this takes some time to describe, but actually happened in an instant. Even as Shu Luodi's voice could be heard, it was replaced by a blood-curdling scream which sounded out throughout the whole area. The 300-meter-long flame dragon slammed into him, instantly transforming his body into bits of ash which floated in the air. Only his scream remained behind, echoing through the air. His bag of holding flew into Meng Hao's hand. As the scene played out in front of everyone, Xiao Changyan's expression grew excited. Next to him, Xiao Caifeng gazed at Meng Hao, her eyes filled with a strange glow. There is no need to even mention the rest of the Xiao clansmen, who stared at Meng Hao with excited inspiration. Sang Luo's expression was unsightly. Having witnessed Shu Luodi's death, his heart was now thumping. He was a cautious person by nature, so he immediately retreated. He was of the late Foundation establishment stage, but he wasn't the type to risk himself. His body flashed as he attempted to flee. In his mind, his opponent would most likely have some apprehensions, and wouldn't pursue. If his opponent didn't pursue, it would be evidence that he viewed himself as inferior. In that case, Sang Luo could make a sudden reverse attack to kill him. This was a tactic that he had frequently employed, and had practiced until the proverbial furnace flames burned blue. However, as soon as he began to fly off, Meng Hao gave off a cold harumph and then leaped into the air, transforming into a prismatic beam that shot after Sang Luo. Seeing this, Sang Luo's face immediately fell. The fact that he's chasing me proves that he thinks he can kill me. This can't be right. His heart trembled as he raced forward. He waved his right hand, causing the black sealing stone to emit a buzzing sound as it shot toward Meng Hao. Meng Hao could fight with late Foundation establishment cultivators who had 9 Dao pillars, although he couldn't do so lightly. Sang Luo, however, only had a mere 7 Dao pillars. Meng Hao had the luxury of being able to look down on him. His right hand flickered with an incantation gesture and the 2 wooden swords appeared. One shot toward the black seal, the other became a colorful beam that shot in pursuit of Sang Luo. A boom filled the air as the black sealing stone was shattered into pieces. Sang Luo let out an angry howl. He eyed the approaching wooden sword, and his body trembled. He quickly snapped a jade slip between his fingers, and then made an incantation gesture with both hands, after which he waved the index of his right finger in the air in front of him. As he did, everything around him seemed to grow dark, as if his finger was sucking in some strange power from around him. His body began to emanate an annoying, prickly aura that caused Meng Hao to frown. The first time he had sensed an aura similar to this was back in the Black Sieve Sect, 1. If you want to review the part where he sensed the aura in the Black Sieve Sect, check out chapter 143, Ghost in the Night. This aura, however, was much weaker, like a firefly compared to a full moon. Actually, now that he thought about it, he had experienced a similar reaction when he was in the cave in the mountain valley. A booming sound once again filled the air as the wooden sword came screeching to a stop in mid-air. A rushing wind blew back the midget's robes, revealing an ugly, scarred face and 2 strange eyes filled with fear. Beads of sweat dripped down his face. "Fellow Daoist, let's talk things through," said Sang Luo nervously. He could tell that whereas he was using all the power he could muster, his opponent was acting casually. The differences between masters are usually instantly obvious. Meng Hao took a moment to sense the aura emanating off of the midget. His heart thumped. He had his speculations regarding this aura, and now that he had seen it once again, he lifted his hand and extended a finger. Demon Sealing, 8th Hex. As his finger descended, everything grew dark. Sang Luo suddenly began to tremble, and his eyes shone with astonishment. He immediately sensed the chi of heaven and earth changing. Suddenly, his cultivation base was suppressed. A whizzing sound could be heard as the wooden sword in front of him shot forward. In the blink of an eye, it would plunge into his neck. His eyes filled with despair. However, At this exact moment, Meng Hao flicked his sleeve. The wooden sword, instead of ripping his head off, spun down and then carried Sang Luo with it back toward Meng Hao. Meng Hao reached out and grabbed Sang Luo by the neck. At this moment, Sang Luo's cultivation base was restored and he could move his body again. His face was pale, though, his eyes filled with terror. He didn't dare to move even an inch. The hand which clamped down on his neck emanated a feeling of death that caused his heart to tremble. In fact, being this close to Meng Hao caused his entire person to shake. The feeling caused by the aura that emanated from Meng Hao caused his heart to seize with terror. His face was pale as he stammered, "You're." Meanwhile, elsewhere in the world, there was a mountain range that was covered in black clouds year-round. Within a valley in this mountain range were two young people. They sat upright, gazing at the go board which lay between them, seemingly lost in thought. One of the young people wore white clothing along with an indifferent expression. This youth's features were beautiful to the extreme, almost otherworldly. The fan in his hand slowly waved back and forth. The other person wore a blue garment. He looked to be about 30 years of age. He held a go piece in his hands as he stared down thoughtfully at the board. Hanging from his face was a jade pendant. Suddenly, a popping sound could be heard, and a crack appeared on its surface. When the crack appeared, the blue-robed young man frowned. He looked at the jade piece, and then back at the go board. "Is something wrong?" asked the white-robed youth in a light, tender voice. "Nothing," replied the blue-robed young man respectfully. "It's just my good-for-nothing brother. He must have offended someone who he's not a match for. He wants me to save him." "That would be Sang Luo, correct?" The white-robed youth smiled. "Go ahead and check out the situation. I don't have anything else to do, I'll tag along." The blue-robed youth immediately stood up. "Your Highness, your status as a Dao child is so lofty, I don't dare." "There's no harm." This white-robed youth was none other than a Dao child of the Blood Demon sect. Chapter 172, Charging into Mid-Foundation Establishment. Within the Xiao clan mountain village, Xiao Changyian's face was filled with enthusiasm as he gazed at Meng Hao. His fellow clansmen stared with similar fanaticism. Meng Hao nodded toward them, but said nothing. He entered his shielded room next to the lake, holding Sang Luo by the neck. The lightning mist appeared. He sat down cross-legged and loosened his grip on Sang Luo. He didn't fight back, but instead stood there pale-faced in front of Meng Hao, a look of respect shining in his eyes. Inside, however, he was nervously waiting for his older brother to arrive and save him. His tiny eyes darted around, eventually falling upon the hat, which still stood next to the lake. He heard the hat's garrulous voice, but didn't dare to stare. He suddenly got the feeling that this place was incredibly bizarre, even more ghastly than his own remote, lonely mountain. Meng Hao looked at Sang Luo for a moment, trying to decide what to do with him. Finally, he lifted his hand into the air and made a grasping motion. The aura emanating from Sang Luo's body condensed into Meng Hao's palm. It seemed invisible, but to Meng Hao, it was very prickly and irritating in nature. He frowned, looking closer at the aura. His eyes flickered. "Could this be demonic qi?" he murmured to himself. He let the aura disperse, and then looked closely over Sang Luo. Sang Luo felt goosebumps underneath Meng Hao's gaze. "Fellow Daoist," he said, but was interrupted by Meng Hao. "There's an evil-doing cultivator here who needs to be converted," he said and then coughed lightly. Hearing this, Sang Luo gaped in astonishment. Suddenly, the meat jelly, which had been talking to the fish in the lake just now, leaped up and seemed to stare fixedly at Sang Luo. Who is it?" said the meat jelly excitedly, rushing over. "You. My poor Ivildor, you can't do that. It's immoral. In the name of justice, allow me to convert you." Before Sang Luo could even react, Meng Hao flicked his sleeve, pushing him backward and snatching his bag of holding. At the same time, the black net shot out and wrapped up Sang Luo tightly. Then Meng Hao shot backward, putting some space between himself and Sang Luo, who watched stupefied as all of this happened. At that instant, the meat jelly hat landed onto Sang Luo's head. It sighed. "Child, there's no need to fear. Just behave, and allow the mighty embodiment of justice to lead you back from the path of wickedness." It seemed to be fairly leaping with excitement. What a well-behaved little child. There's no need to resist, no need fight back, no need to feel perplexed. I will help you. Listen, the first thing you need to do is... As the meat jelly prattled on, Sang Luo's body began to tremble. However, he didn't dare to fight back. Meng Hao felt a bit sorry for Sang Luo. He erased the branding within Sang Luo's bag of holding. When he opened it, his eyes shined brightly. There was quite an accumulation of spirit stones inside, many times more than that which had been given to him by the Xiao clan. This should be just about the amount I need for duplication purposes. Plus, I have a handful of bags of holding that I acquired in the Black Civ sect's blessed land. There are a few Civ Earth pills in those. Not many, but a few. He waved his hand, causing the lightning mist to condense so that no one in the area could see inside. Then, he pulled out the copper mirror and began to duplicate. Time passed, and soon dusk fell. From outside the lightning mist, enraged shouting could be heard coming out of Sang Luo's mouth. It seemed to be filled with an indescribable torment and misery. "Be quiet. Let me go. Ah! You damned hat. Shut up. Ari, don't be like that, child. You know, you interrupted me. I forgot where I left off. Oh well, I'll just start over. Listen well, okay? The path of evil is filled with thistles and thorns. But don't worry, child, I'm here. I definitely will not allow the thistles and thorns to stab into your tender buttocks." Meng Hao glanced outside, feeling a bit sympathetic for Sang Luo. Then he looked down at the several dozen or so Civ Earth pills in front of him. He took a deep breath, and then picked one up and placed it into his mouth. It dissolved as soon as it entered, turning into a wave of spiritual power that Meng Hao had not felt enter his body in a long time. His body was like a parched desert suddenly inundated with nourishing water. His face lit up, and he closed his eyes to begin doing breathing exercises. Slowly, he filtered out the sounds of the outside world and sank into cultivation. 1 pill. 2 pills. 3 pills. As he swallowed the pills, beams of moonlight in the night sky began to twist and turn. They descended down toward the earth, and onto Meng Hao. From a distance, it had the appearance of a massive sheet of silk descending upon the Xiao clan. The Civ Earth pill really did deserve to be called a divine pill of the Black Civ sect, and one of the 5 most effective pills in the southern domain for the Foundation establishment stage. It was powerfully effective, much more so than Meng Hao had imagined. When he put the 17th pill into his mouth, his body instantly began to shake. The indistinct image of a rapidly congealing 4th Dao pillar was suddenly visible inside him. When it was complete, Meng Hao's cultivation base would have broken through to the mid-foundation establishment stage. He took a deep breath, frowning as he looked up at the shining waterfall of moonlight above him in the sky. It's really a bit too conspicuous. This is an amazing pill, but it's definitely going to attract a lot of attention. There was nothing to do about it, however. The only thing he could do was try to break through as quickly as possible, form the 4th Dao pillar and reach mid-foundation establishment. He took a deep breath and picked up the 18th Civ Earth pill. When he placed it into his mouth, his 3 perfect Dao pillars trembled, sucking in boundless spiritual power. The 4th Dao pillar was rapidly becoming solid. Outside, in the darkness of the night, the sheets of moonlight had indeed attracted attention within the Xiao clan. Xiao Chang'an might be nearing the end of his longevity, but his eyesight was sharp. His eyes narrowed, and he immediately moved over to the shielded area within which Meng Hao was practicing cultivation. He sat down cross-legged to keep guard. Meng Hao had showed great kindness to the Xiao clan. Xiao Chang'an knew that after his own death, the only chance for his clan to survive had to do with Meng Hao. Therefore, he had resolved that no matter what, he would not allow Meng Hao's cultivation to be disturbed. Meanwhile, outside the Xiao clan, the sheets of moonlight had caused quite a stir in the various cultivation clans in the area. More than a few people flew up into the air to investigate the area where the moonlight was cascading onto. This was especially true of Sang Luo's older brother, the blue-robed young man. He flew along together with the white-robed youth. They flew through the air unhurriedly. It seemed as if they weren't going very fast, but in fact, they shot forward several hundred meters with each burst of flight. When they saw the falling sheets of moonlight, the white-robed youth's eyes narrowed. The blue-robed young man frowned. That appears to be the same place where Sang Luo is. Interesting. Someone in Blood Demon Sect territory is consuming a Civ Earth pill from the Black Civ Sect. And from the look of it, more than one pill. At this exact moment, deep in a forested region some distance from the Xiao clan, was an enormous tree. Within the tree was a group of 10 cultivators sitting closed-eyed in meditation. Each member of this group had a sword strapped to his back, and they all wore identical clothing. It was very quiet. Not a crow or sparrow could be heard. But when the sheets of moonlight appeared, the 10 people opened their eyes to look at it. Chen Fan was among the group. He looked off into the distance, frowning. Hushed discussion immediately broke out among these cultivators, all of whom were all disciples of the Solitary Sword sect. That area is near the border of the Blood Demon sect. What is that phenomenon? That's the sign of someone consuming a Civ Earth pill from the Black Civ sect. It can't be covered up. Someone in that area must be consuming medicinal pills. Just how many pills did that person consume? That amount of moonlight is shocking. Within the Xiao clan manor, clan members all began to grow nervous, as if they were about to face up against a powerful foe. The past days had been a mixture of both pleasant surprises and horrifying dread. Once and again, they had faced extermination as a clan, and repeatedly had been saved. As of this moment, their hearts pounded. This was especially true when they saw the conspicuous cascading moonlight. It only served to cause them more anxiety and nervousness. Xiao Caifeng was pale-faced. She had a talent for talismans, but was hindered by her cultivation base, and couldn't fully employ their power. She could only stand off to the side, silently watching Xiao Changyan sitting cross-legged as he guarded over Meng Hao. Not much time passed before beams of multicolored light filled the night sky, screaming toward the Xiao clan from all directions. From the look of it, there were at least 10 figures. They floated there in the sky, eyes glittering as their gazes fell onto the Xiao clan, and Meng Hao's secluded meditation area, upon which poured sheets of moonlight. An old man of the early Foundation establishment stage approached, laughing loudly. Interesting. I think I'll just have to see who exactly is in secluded meditation, causing such a scene. From his expression, it was clear he did not have good intentions. Greed flickered in his eyes. Obviously, he intended to disturb the meditation and snatch away the luck of whoever sat within. It seemed everyone in the area had similar plans. The Xiao clan was by no means weak. However, the Shu clan was not the only one in the area who had coveted the lake. Many of the surrounding clans had eyed it like a tiger eyeing its prey. The newly arrived cultivators watched the old man as Xiao Changyan looked up at him. The power of Xiao Changyan's cultivation base suddenly exploded out. He took a deep breath and shot up into the sky. A boom rang out, and the old man spun backward out of control, coughing up some blood along the way. Xiao Changyan's face looked deathly pale as he hovered in the air, glaring around. I, Xiao Changyan, already have one foot in the coffin, he said coolly. Life and death mean little to me. Anyone who wishes to tread the path of death with me, please, step forward. His cultivation base was not incredibly high, but his words contained a powerful threat. Underneath the shield, the growth of Meng Hao's cultivation base had reached a critical juncture. As he continued to consume the Civ Earth pills, his fourth Dao pillar was more than half solidified. It wouldn't be long before it was complete. When that happened, Meng Hao would not be infinitely more powerful than before, but he would be able to sweep effortlessly across the Foundation establishment stage. That was the power of a perfect foundation. Chapter 173, Rejected by the Heavens? Plunder. Meng Hao was focused on breaking through to form his fourth Dao pillar. However, regarding what was happening on the outside, it was no surprise to him. He had anticipated that such circumstances would come about. The cascading moonlight had focused attention on his increase in level. Although it hadn't attracted universal attention, it had certainly caused quite a disturbance. Meng Hao was well aware that as more time passed, the situation would grow more volatile. The best method to bring matters to a conclusion was to finish breaking through as quickly as possible. However, a perfect foundation could not absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. He was only able to rely on the Civ Earth pills, and despite their extraordinariness, the process was becoming more difficult. He could clearly sense that they were losing their efficacy. Based on his current momentum, it didn't seem they would be enough to complete the fourth Dao pillar. As Meng Hao silently continued to cultivate, outside, Xiao Changyan's words echoed out amidst the moonlight. Everything was silent for a moment afterward, and then cold laughter rang out. 3 figures shot forward. Their features were indistinct within the darkness of night, but their cultivation bases rippled, making it clear that one of their numbers was of the mid-foundation establishment stage. In the surrounding cultivation clans, even the mid-foundation establishment stage was considered quite powerful. Were it not so, the Xiao clan would not have been able to occupy the Spirit Lake for so long. It was only now that Xiao Changyan was reaching the end of his longevity that the current situation had come to be. The 3 figures whistled through the air towards Xiao Changyan. A boom exploded out as the 4 people collided in battle. Xiao Changyan coughed up a mouthful of blood. His face was pale as he flew backward like a kite with a broken string. The mid-foundation establishment cultivator laughed coldly and proceeded forward. The other 2 shot toward Meng Hao's shield, laughing. It seemed to be a moment of crisis. Xiao Changyan was torn. He knew that Meng Hao must be at a critical juncture. Unfortunately, he was currently powerless to intervene. Even burning some of his life force to gain extra power would be useless. The 2 early foundation establishment cultivators reached the shield. As soon as they touched it, a rumbling sound emerged. Within the space of 2 breaths, the shield collapsed. The shield had been created by Xiao Caifeng, who was only at the qi condensation stage. For it to hold up against the early foundation establishment stage for the space of 3 breaths testified to the outstanding latent talent of the one who had created the talisman. Booming echoed out as the shield was destroyed. As the 2 early foundation establishment stage cultivators slammed into the lightning mist, miserable screams echoed out. In an instant, their bodies were surrounded by lightning. Cracking sounds could be heard as they were thrown backward, blood spewing from their mouths. Expressions of shock covered their faces as their Dao pillars trembled on the verge of collapse. The lightning mist roiled. Its protection extended about 30 meters out from Meng Hao in all directions, creating a no-man's land which no one could enter. Xiao Changyan heaved a sigh of relief. The mid-foundation establishment cultivator with whom he had been battling paused, looking over his shoulder at the lightning mist, astonishment filling his eyes. Within the lightning mist, Meng Hao opened his eyes. They glowed brightly as he frowned and looked down at his last 3 Civ Earth pills. As for his 4th Dao pillar, it was about 90% complete. These pills would be insufficient to complete the last 10%. These Civ Earth pills are only so effective. Perhaps I won't be able to reach the mid-foundation establishment stage after all. A stubborn look shone within his eyes. He knew that his path of cultivation was different from that of others. He had acquired incredible battle prowess, but the cultivation he practiced was much more challenging. Even as he thought of these things, a racket could be heard coming from the outside. Fellow Taoists, this person's cultivation has stirred up such power. I'm afraid that once he emerges, all of our cultivation clans will be at his mercy. Let's take advantage of this opportunity to destroy him now to prevent future troubles. Correct. The Xiao clan is weak. Their existence is meaningless. The extermination of such clans is the natural order. It can't be changed. Let's attack together. This lightning mist can't hold up against all of us. The 10 or more foundation establishment cultivators outside began attacking the lightning mist in unison. All of these people were from local cultivator clans. As they attacked, booming sounds lifted up to fill the sky. The lightning mist seethed violently. An evil heart is a useless life. Meng Hao's eyes sparkled icily as he looked out through the lightning mist. He quickly gathered up the remaining 3 pills and popped them into his mouth. They immediately dissolved, and the cascading moonlight grew stronger, as if a river were pouring down into Meng Hao's body. Although their effectiveness was waning, his 4th Dao pillar was now just a hair away from being complete. Just as the Dao pillar was about to appear in full, Meng Hao suddenly sensed an inexplicable roaring within his body. His expression flickered as he realized that his body was starting to wither, as if his flesh and blood and life force, even his cultivation base, were being sucked into the fourth Tao pillar. He had just unlocked another of the secrets of the perfect foundation. It was with unbridled power that the fourth Tao pillar began of its own will to suck in everything into it. It seemed that the fourth Tao pillar would form at any cost, even if it caused the death of Meng Hao. His face flickered at this sudden turn of events. He had never imagined that something like this would happen. It was at this exact moment that the lightning mist finally collapsed under the attack of the 10 Foundation establishment cultivators. They rushed in. Meng Hao eyed them approaching, his face grim. His body was withering, and his life force was trickling away. The hair on his head had already begun turning white. His cultivation base was still there, though. Suddenly, an early Foundation establishment cultivator appeared in front of him. Before the man could react, Meng Hao's hand shot out and grabbed him by the throat. He squeezed, and the cultivator's eyes filled with disbelief. The man's neck shattered. Even as he died, Meng Hao's body trembled, and his eyes filled with a strange light. The man's corpse suddenly began to shrink and wither. Within the blink of an eye, it was a mere skeleton. The man's cultivation base rushed in through Meng Hao's hand and entered the fourth Tao pillar. So that's how it is. Meng Hao's eyes grew brighter. I have a perfect foundation, but when my first 3 Tao pillars formed within the Blood Immortal Legacy tournament, there was more than enough spiritual energy to absorb, so I couldn't even sense the potency of the Tao pillars. But now, things are clear. After reaching a certain point, the fourth Tao pillar reaches a phase in which only death can stop its progress. When this happens, it will even consume my own life force. The reason is because it can't absorb spiritual energy from the outside world, only from my flesh and blood. Perfection. Perfection is so potent. But such potency is also a weapon. I've been rejected by the heavens. Therefore, I must plunder from the living. The bodies of cultivators are filled with spiritual energy that does not belong to heaven and earth. Therefore, it can be pillaged away. Now I understand. It seems that in the future, it will be like this every time I form a new Tao pillar. Today, my fourth Tao pillar will appear. These thoughts ran through Meng Hao's head in an instant. He loosened his grip, then looked around at the surrounding cultivators, his eyes radiating icy cold. His body flashed as he shot toward them. Miserable screams rang out. All of these people had cultivation bases at the mid-foundation establishment level at the highest. Most were at the early foundation establishment stage. Could they possibly match up against Meng Hao? As Meng Hao passed each person, his hand would snake out, and with no effort on his part, the fourth Tao pillar would feed, thirstily sucking in energy. Body after body turned into bones. Before the death of each cultivator, their cultivation base would be sucked rapidly into Meng Hao, consumed by his Tao pillar. Soon, Meng Hao was no longer withered, and his flesh and blood began to rebuild. As Xianxia observed this happening, dread appeared on his face. The cultivators who had moments ago been charging forward, suddenly began to retreat at high speed. In their eyes, Meng Hao was no cultivator, he had transformed into some type of evil demon. Wherever he passed, blood-curdling screams could be heard, and he left behind only ragged corpses. Their minds reeled, and expressions of unbridled horror appeared on their faces. What magic is this? What is he doing? This guy, he's sucking up the life and cultivation bases of all those dead fellow Taoists. The remaining 20 or so cultivators were scared witless and retreated in chaos. Meng Hao caught up with one of them. As he placed his hand on the crown of the man's head, a blood-curdling scream echoed out. His body began to shrivel, and then he died. Meng Hao's face was no longer pale and bloodless, it was now ruddy and filled with life. He took a deep breath, and in his mind he suddenly recalled the scene in Patriarch Reliance's Immortal's Cave, when Patriarch Reliance had absorbed the core formation cultivators. 1. To revisit the scene of Patriarch Reliance using the great art of demonic life, check out Chapter 82, The Great Art of Demonic Life. The great art of demonic life, thought Meng Hao, his eyes flickering. It seemed that what he was doing now was very similar indeed to the great art of demonic life that Patriarch Reliance had used. Or perhaps this is some type of enlightenment that comes from being in a kill or be killed situation. The great art of demonic life. Demonic life. Meng Hao sighed inwardly as he suppressed his deeply ingrained Confucian way of thinking. His body flickered with the power of the fourth Tao pillar. He sighed as his hand clasped around the throat of another cultivator. The fourth Tao pillar sucked in the man's cultivation base. Soon, the fourth Tao pillar would complete its circle and be complete. The path of my perfect foundation will be strewn with mountains of corpses and seas of blood. I understand. He sighed again, and yet continued forward without hesitation. His heart did not grow soft. Confucianism would always exist within him, and he would never be truly merciless. However, when the circumstances required, he could act without mercy. Chapter 174. Perfect Mid-Foundation Establishment. Moonlight shone over the savage scene. It wasn't just Xiao Changyan whose heart was filled with icy dread. The rest of the Xiao clan members looked at Meng Hao, terrified. The other surrounding cultivators retreated as quickly as possible, knowing that the slightest hesitation could result in a horrifying death. However, Meng Hao was faster. He looked like a specter, his hair floating around his head as he pursued his quarry. He sucked in a cultivation base and life force, then loosened his grip, dropping the shriveled, trembling skeletal body to the ground. It wasn't as if none of the cultivators tried to fight back. Unfortunately, their resistance was futile. To Meng Hao, they were like nothing. Even before the emergence of his fourth Tao pillar, Meng Hao could easily battle the late foundation establishment stage. Now that his fourth Tao pillar was almost complete, he was on the very threshold of the mid-foundation establishment stage. What could these outcasts from the Blood Demon sect possibly do to resist him? It was their doom to be here today, a deadly choice on their part. They had chosen to destroy the lightning mist, and in doing so, had unleashed the spirit of death. Meng Hao was more than half recovered now. His hair was no longer white, nor was his skin withered. Everything that his Tao pillar had sucked away from him was now restored. His fourth Tao pillar emanated a demonic aura, as if it desired to plunder and consume all spiritual power. I am cut off from heaven and earth, so I will take it upon myself to plunder. This potency is perfection. Boom! Meng Hao closed in on two early foundation establishment cultivators. They turned around, roaring as they unleashed the full power of the might of their cultivation bases. They used magical arts, they used magical treasures, going all out against Meng Hao. A booming echoed out, and then Meng Hao was standing directly in front of one of them. His palm pushed lightly against the man's face. A desiccated corpse dropped to the ground. His body flickered, another miserable cry echoed out. Everyone who remained alive trembled as they watched a middle-aged man grow old. His hair became white and then fell out. His flesh and blood wilted away. His eyes clouded over as he took one last breath and then passed into death. Meng Hao sighed. He had no deep grudge against these people. However, they had appeared here and had attacked him with the intention of wiping him out and preventing him from making a breakthrough in his cultivation. Although they were targeting him because of the Xiao clan, the fact was, they were here. To suddenly be facing Meng Hao was simply their fate. Meng Hao understood, his eyes flashed with enlightenment, and he continued to attack without hesitation. He sucked away the life force and cultivation base of an old man of the mid-foundation establishment stage, whereupon a loud roaring filled his body. It emanated out, filling the air, causing everyone to look on in shock. The fleeing cultivators trembled in dread. Everything that was happening was like a horrible dream, a nightmare which they would never be able to forget for the rest of their lives. The image of Meng Hao had been branded indelibly onto their very souls, and would stay with them until their deaths. As the boom rang out, a tremor ran through Meng Hao's body. He suddenly began to emit a golden light. It spread out, causing Meng Hao to appear as if he were covered with golden armor. At the same time, the fourth Tao pillar appeared in full. The roaring was coming from the Tao pillar itself. Up above in the sky, dark clouds began to congeal. It seemed as if within them, an invisible pair of eyes was staring down onto Meng Hao. A feeling like that of tribulation lightning suddenly appeared. It disappeared almost immediately, as if it was simply observing, waiting until core formation to unleash its destructive punishment. Though there was no wind, Meng Hao's hair whipped about his head wildly. With the appearance of his fourth Tao pillar, he had now broken through to the mid-level of foundation establishment. With the power of the perfect foundation, Meng Hao was now the most powerful person of the foundation establishment stage among the 5 sects and 3 clans of the southern domain. The moment he broke through, the blood drained from the faces of the surrounding cultivators, and their bodies trembled. The Tao pillars within their bodies suddenly began to quiver. In fact, cracks appeared on the Tao pillars of some of the cultivators, causing them to cough up blood, faces filled with astonishment. It seemed like their Tao pillars were ashamed to be in the presence of Meng Hao's perfect Tao pillars. With his perfect foundation, he was a sovereign among the foundation establishment stage. His incredible might and power caused the hearts of all other foundation cultivators to tremble, and their Tao pillars to become unstable. In fact, because of the influence of Meng Hao's Tao pillars, the trembling cultivators began to prostrate themselves toward him. This was not their idea. It was veneration toward their sovereign from the Tao pillars themselves. Their bodies were not even under their own control as they lowered their heads. Their minds were filled with roaring emptiness. This was true crushing pressure. This was a power that had reached such a level that it created a relationship like that between heaven and earth. In the cultivation world, a crushing pressure is a power that exists because of the vast difference between different cultivation levels. However, this crushing pressure emanating from Meng Hao came from the Tao pillar itself. Perfect Tao pillars can exhibit crushing pressure onto all other Tao pillars. If a cultivator who had completed the circle of foundation establishment had merely fractured Tao pillars, he could do nothing but tremble in front of Meng Hao. This was the power of 4 perfect Tao pillars. It would be hard to imagine the power Meng Hao could wield after he created his 5th, 6th, and even 9th Tao pillars. What crushing pressure would he then be able to employ? At that time, it wouldn't matter if he faced a cracked foundation or even a flawless foundation. They would all be as weak as ants to Meng Hao. After completing 9 perfect Tao pillars, then perhaps Meng Hao would be able to pass into core formation. Meng Hao had no way to predict what that would be like, but his heart filled with increasingly powerful anticipation nonetheless. It was at this time that just outside of the Xiao clan, 2 beams of prismatic light shot through the air. One flickered with blue light, the other white as they flew forward and caught sight of Meng Hao. "So it turns out to be a chosen," said the white-robed youth. The blood demon sect's current Tao child looked down, eyes glowing. They were filled with battle, seemingly kindled into burning. They flashed like lightning as they examined Meng Hao. To the side was the blue-robed young man, the brother of Sang Luo. As he gazed upon Meng Hao, his eyes narrowed and his heart filled with an indescribable sense of danger. At this same moment, in a location not too far away, but not too near, existed an enormous basin in the earth. There were actually 10 such basins, each one filled with richly ornamented buildings and pagodas. Each basin also contained a lake. From a distance this place looked mysterious and dark. This land was none other than one of the 5 great sects of the southern domain, the Blood Demon sect. Within the center of the 10 basins was a tree. One half of the tree was wilted and dry, the other half was lush and flourishing. It was a very bizarre sight, and clearly something beyond ordinary. This tree was a precious treasure of the Blood Demon sect. Underneath the tree, an indistinct figure sat cross-legged. Suddenly, the figure raised its head. Its vision pierced through everything until it reached the Xiao clan and Meng Hao. A smile appeared on its face, and an indistinct murmuring could be heard. "So, it was not in vain that I helped you those 3 times, the indistinct figure said, its voice husky. "This kid has certainly grown up. It seems Yua is there too. Perhaps this is the tribulation that violet-robed cultivator spoke of the day she was born." Thunder rumbled above in the sky. "The Tao of the heavens is not dead. I shall not enter the yellow springs of the underworld." The figure looked up into the sky, and its face suddenly emitted 2 beams of ferocious, red light. This was none other than the blood-red figure who had appeared that year at the Reliance sect. This was the blood-red demon lord who had flashed through the sky to save Meng Hao from obliteration at the hands of Lord Revelation. 1. If you want to review the 2 previous appearances of the demon lord, Check out Chapter 34, Fame from 1,000 years ago. And Chapter 94, You Really Want Me to Come Out? In the air above the Xiao clan, a golden light glittered. The surrounding cultivators trembled in fear. Meng Hao turned his head, his gaze sweeping to fall upon the white-robed cultivator. He could only be described as beautiful. His body was covered with a voluminous white robe, and he emanated a demonic aura. However, in addition to the demonic aura, there was a refined and cultivated air. He floated there, and though he was accompanied by another cultivator, all eyes were on him. Even if there were countless thousands upon thousands of people present, he would be the center of attention. His beauty, coupled with his demonic air, made it such that even most women would have trouble surpassing him. Were he wearing women's clothing, he would be a beauty unmatched in his generation. As Meng Hao's looked upon the white-robed youth, their gazes locked. Instantly, Meng Hao could sense the desire for battle within those eyes. Next to the beautiful blood demon Dao child was a blue-robed cultivator. His gaze immediately fell upon Sang Luo, who laid entangled in the black net on the ground not too far off. He was just about to spring into action when the white-robed youth held out a hand to stop him. "You're not his match." The white-robed youth smiled. "I find this person very interesting." His smile was warm and calm. Were this person to be wearing women's clothing, this consummately elegant smile would make flowers grow dim. After smiling, the white-robed youth took a step forward. This step landed on air, but as it did, Meng Hao's eyes narrowed. It felt as if the step had landed directly on his heart. His entire condition changed, as if he was suddenly under great pressure. A wave of power rippled out from the white-robed youth, clearly caused by a completed circle of late Foundation establishment. "These are my 7 demonic lotus steps. Each step is unbreakable. Take care, fellow Daoist." With a smile, the white-robed youth began to take a second step. His power suddenly surged to immense heights, as if the power itself contained his will. It spread out in all directions. Meng Hao's eyes gleamed. As the white-robed youth approached, a strange aura seemed to be building up in the area. It circled around, emanating a mysterious aroma. It smelled pleasant, however, it could cause bewilderment which could lead to total loss of oneself. As the second step descended, Meng Hao began to shake, and the gleam in his eye grew sharper. Smiling, the white-robed youth began to take a third step. As it fell, the power in the area grew exponentially stronger. His body seemed to transform into something invincible. It was only the third step, but in Meng Hao's perception, time itself seemed to suddenly whiz by. It was as if the entire world were being replaced by something else. Chapter 175. Li Shiqi. A strong feeling filled Meng Hao. It was as if the area surrounding him was cut off from everything else. It felt like his cultivation base was about to degrade and he would soon fall back to the early Foundation establishment stage. At the same time, an incredibly realistic vision appeared in his mind. He returned to Mount Daking, to Xianxia County, to the window of his room, underneath the moonlight. He saw himself sitting there reading. Meng Hao had never experienced a magical technique such as this. This was his first time. His eyes narrowed. The white-robed youth's fourth step was just beginning. As it did, Meng Hao's mind reeled, and more visions appeared. He suddenly realized that the state caused by his opponent would be impossible to break once the seventh step was reached. That was the pinnacle, and when that last step descended, his opponent would be able to employ a pressure so intense that he wouldn't need to attack. That pressure contained a power that could sweep away the Foundation establishment stage. If the art is unbreakable, then I must break the situation. Meng Hao's eyes glittered, and his head tilted up. He lifted his right hand and pointed down toward the ground. The earth seemed to shake, and yet, what was shaking was not the earth, but Meng Hao. Ghost images appeared everywhere. The only thing that didn't have a ghost image was Meng Hao. "This is the 8th hex, body sealing finger," said Meng Hao coolly. "Take care, fellow Daoist." He lifted his hand and pointed forward. Suddenly, Meng Hao's body stopped vibrating. The ghost images all overlapped and descended toward the white-robed youth. They merged into his body, and suddenly, a conspicuous ghost image of the young man himself appeared. The fifth step that he had been about to take could no longer be completed. The white-robed youth's mind trembled. He looked at Meng Hao with eyes glowing, his expression dignified. Meng Hao didn't attack. This battle was more of an exchange of techniques, not a battle to the death. Meng Hao stood there indifferently, calmly looking at the young man. After the space of a single breath, the white-robed youth recovered. However, the power caused by the overlapping momentum of his steps had dissipated, nullified by Meng Hao. The 7 demonic lotus steps was an art that utilized the power of momentum. Once unleashed, even high-level cultivation bases would have difficulty breaking it. From the time he had emerged as a figure in the cultivation world until now, the white-robed youth had never encountered someone of the foundation establishment stage who could break the 7 demonic lotus steps. Not even Dao children of the other sects or clans were able to. But today, in this place, he had witnessed an unprecedented occurrence. His eyes shined with a strange light as he gazed at Meng Hao. His face filled with respect. This was an esteem that only powerful experts of the same generation would feel for each other. To receive without giving is not a principle by which I live, said Meng Hao coolly. I also have an attack to share. Please prepare. He lifted his left hand, using the nail of his thumb to slice his middle finger. Blood flowed out, causing his middle finger to become crimson. His hand moved in a casual motion, but his eyes were filled with ferocity. As he attacked, observers could not see anything special happening. However, the white-robed youth's pupils instantly constricted. From his perspective, everything had suddenly turned to the color of blood. His expression flickered slightly, and a sense of imminent, fatal danger welled up in him. His right hand shot up to slap his bag of holding. A branch appeared in his hand upon which grew 3 withered leaves and 3 luxuriant leaves. He waved it in front of him. No sound could be heard, but faint ripples circled out. Meng Hao gave a bored snort and retreated backward 3 paces. As he did, his power began to decline, so he stopped and took a step forward. The step descended, seeming to trample directly on the heart of the white-robed youth, whose mind shook. His body swayed, as if a massive, invisible force were pushing down on it. He retreated backward a few paces, the blood draining from his face despite the aid of his magical item. As the color slowly returned to his face, he gave Meng Hao a deep look. Senior, I am Li Shichi. It seemed this white-robed youth actually had a girl's name, 1. Li Shichi's name in Chinese is Li Shichi Lsh. Li is a common family name. Shi means poem. Qi means fine jade. He stared at Meng Hao as he asked in a soft voice, Fellow Daoist, would it be possible for me to inquire as to your illustrious name? Meng Hao got an odd feeling when looking at the white-robed youth. There was something strange about him. He thought for a moment, then replied, Meng Hao. Brother Meng, the person you have in your custody is actually a blood relative of my junior brother. I hope you can release him. If he did anything to offend you, I offer my sincere apologies. Meng Hao looked at blue-robed youth who stood by Li Shichi. He was currently looking at Sang Luo off in the distance. Meng Hao raised his right hand, and the black net loosened. Sang Luo, face pale, shot away with all the power he could muster. Meng Hao's hat pursued him at top speed. Don't run away. Meng Hao, how could you do such a thing? The meat jelly roared angrily as it shot after Sang Luo. You can't do that, it's immoral. You can't just let him go. I haven't rescued him from the path of evil yet. Sang Luo's body trembled as he raced to the side of the blue-robed cultivator. His face was covered with terror as he clutched at his older brother's clothes and stared in horror at the approaching hat. Li Shichi stared in shock at the hat. The meat jelly's voice suddenly sounded surprised. What are you looking at? You're a female? Heavens, you look like a guy, but you're actually a girl. Strange, very strange. Norot, Norot. It returned to Meng Hao, plopping down onto his head and once again changing color to bright green. Li Shichi's face suddenly looked extremely unsightly as she glared at the hat, and then Meng Hao. All the good feelings from moments before suddenly evaporated. Meng Hao made a wry smile. The meat jelly had suddenly made everything very clear. Meng Hao suddenly had an acute understanding of why people called the meat jelly ultimate vexation. Ignoring the looks on the faces of Meng Hao and Li Shiqi, it started to prattle on, apparently preparing to talk for at least 3 days and 3 nights without stopping. Strange. So strange. You're actually a female, huh? In the midst of its excitement, the meat jelly seemed to have found something else interesting. It looked off into the distance. It was at this exact moment that off in the blood demon sect, sitting cross-legged underneath the strange tree, the demon lord's body suddenly quivered. He immediately retracted his vision, cutting off all connection to the outside world. "Damn it," said the indistinct image of the demon lord, panting. "How could that abominable thing have appeared? Didn't His Excellency suppress it? And yet, there it is, attached to the body of a disciple of the demon sealing sect. I cannot get entangled with it." According to the legends, there were many powerful experts in ancient times who were driven insane by it. "It looks weak though, it must not have been able to sense me." Back in the Xiao clan mountain village, the meat jelly hat gazed off into the distance. It seemed to be lost in thought for a moment, after which its body flickered, and it looked back at Li Shiqi. Li Shiqi gave a cold snort and then glared angrily at Meng Hao. Without another word, she spun and flew off. The blue-robed cultivator gave a dry cough, then picked up Sang Luo and transformed into a colorful beam that shot off into the distance. "You're leaving, little girl? Don't leave. I haven't finished talking." Meng Hao's face once again filled with a dark expression. The surrounding cultivators wanted to leave. Unfortunately, their Dao pillars trembled, and they were incapable of even moving. They stared nervously at Meng Hao. "From this day forward, none of you are permitted to step a foot into the Xiao clan," said Meng Hao coolly. He flicked his sleeve, unbinding the cultivators. They immediately gave deep bows to Meng Hao, and pledged to follow his instructions. After that, they fled at top speed. When they were gone, pale-faced Xiaochen approached. Clasping hands, he bowed deeply to Meng Hao. "Many thanks, benefactor." All of the Xiao clan members approached and began kowtowing to Meng Hao. Xiao Caifeng stared at him blankly for a moment, and then nodded. Meng Hao looked around at the Xiao clan. "I can't stay here," he said gently. "I must leave in a few days. The only help I can provide is what I've already done." "It's enough," said Xiao Chang'an, bowing deeply. "Fear of benefactor will keep the Xiao clan safe for dozens of years to come. Once the Xiao clan produces another foundation establishment cultivator, then our position will be secured permanently." The death aura which emanated from his body had grown stronger. Most likely, he would reach the end of his life within a year. Meng Hao said nothing. After a long moment, he nodded, then returned into the lightning mist. 3 days later, Meng Hao chose to leave. Before departing, he severed 2 vines and left them in the spirit lake. He helped Xiao Caifeng to brand them to herself. In the future, they would belong to the Xiao clan. Xiao Caifeng watched with a smile as Meng Hao left. Her eyes followed him as he disappeared into the distance. Who knew how long his shadow would rest on her heart? Her gaze rested on the spot where he had disappeared. She knew inside that there was no possibility of anything happening between the two of them. Xiao Chen looked at Xiao Caifeng and sighed. His body seemed even weaker in the early morning sun. He was only growing older and older. Several days later, Meng Hao sped through the sky, flying along the border territory between the Blood Demon sect and the Solitary Sword sect. A frown covered his face because of the incessant yammering of the meat jelly hat. It hadn't stopped talking at all during the previous days. A female. Waraha. It turned out she was a girl. "Meng Hao, don't you think it's strange? Hey, why aren't you saying anything? You can't do that, it's immoral. It turns out you fought with a girl. Heavens. You know, I'm an elder of the senior generation, with ever-changing forms. How can you treat me this way? Acting like this is very wrong, very immoral." Veins of blood filled Meng Hao's eyes, along with a look of despair. He really couldn't deal with this type of torment. The hat's endless chattering was enough to drive a person crazy. Meng Hao could feel his temper growing worse and worse. But attacking the meat jelly was useless. Cursing it did nothing. It couldn't be thrown away. It was stuck to him like dog skin plaster, seemingly attached to him for life. Meng Hao couldn't think of any other alternative than to simply go insane. He proceeded forward wearily. Suddenly, his eyes flickered as he caught sight of 8 bright beams shooting toward him. They were all cultivators of the Foundation establishment stage. The beams of light were all the color of blood. Several of the cultivators were maintaining a spell, within which was the indistinct image of some sort of enormous blood-colored beast. It floated above them as they proceeded forward. Seeing these 8 cultivators, Meng Hao's eyes flashed, and he suddenly spoke to the meat jelly. "You say you have ever-changing forms? I don't believe you." "You don't believe me?" cried the meat jelly furiously. It seemed incapable of accepting this. Its dignity and honor had been trampled upon. This chapter was sponsored by David Fan, Eric Archer, Robert Kunze, and Gary Cosby.